Have you ever wanted a dog who ignores other dogs, especially on leash, but your dog is lunging, barking, growling, just going insane? With a couple of things, you can change that even by yourself or with a professional. If you have a puppy at home, kudos! This is the most easy age to change how your dog is reacting to other dogs. If you teach your puppy right from the beginning that another dog just means look at me, come with me, do something else, your dog will grow up to just be fine on leash and just see other dogs but not go there. On the other hand, if you are in a puppy class that always starts the same way, puppies go in, leashes off, all hell breaks loose. This is a recipe for disaster. So if you're with a puppy and you're in puppy class, check if this is done. If yes, switch puppy classes. And if you have an adult dog, and I'm guessing a lot who are watching this have an adult dog who is already going crazy on leash. What you need is, first and foremost, the right distance. I cannot stretch this enough, and I have mentioned it in a wide variety of videos. Distance is crucial. There is a distance where your dog can see another dog but not go insane. And that distance is the one you can start training in. So, find the distance where your dog can look at the other dog, and that's it. And the important thing is to allow your dog to look at the other dog. Many trainers forbid the dog to react in any kind of way and don't look at the other dog, don't sniff, don't do anything. But this is not a robot. This is your dog. It's a living creature. And of course, he wants to look at whoever's coming toward him. That's natural and that should always be allowed. So allow your dog to look at the other dog. It's very important. And then your dog has to learn a strategy that he can use. So he has to do something else, right? Because we cannot do nothing. We have to do something or we're dead. So your dog has to learn to do something else that is rewarding for him, right? So, for example, sniff on the ground and pick up some treats or whatever. Whatever it is for your dog. And then it just needs practice. And with practice, you can decrease the distance and your dog will stay comfortable if you're careful. Always watch out for those signs. So if you see your dog tensing up, get more distance in. If you see your dog being fine, you can try to get a little closer. And if you don't want to do it alone and you want to get there faster with an individually tailored plan to your needs and your dog's needs, go to the description, book a free call. We see how I can help and just speed up the process, right? Because otherwise, it's just trial and error, right? But if you want to do it by yourself, watch out for those cues your dog is giving you. Have you ever heard somebody saying that it's always the human's fault when the dog is acting out? Today we're going to talk about whose fault it is and if the saying it's always the other end of the leash is true. It's funny because especially women jump on that train so fast. They kind of start blaming themselves at the first opportunity they get. I'm kind of the same, so tell me in the comments if this is something that you're experiencing too. I would love to know because it's happening to me all the time. And reading social media comments or wherever you're hearing this, that the problem is always on the other end of the leash, so the human end, doesn't help. And the thing is, in some cases, we are responsible for what happens to our dog. A lot of cases. And sometimes we are even at fault when our dogs misbehave. Because we taught them something that's not helpful. But we are not doing that on purpose. I mean, when I first got Sammy, I had read up on the breeds, Shelties, because they told me he was a Sheltie. And what I read was
those dogs need at least 3 hours of exercise daily, physical exercise. So I took him on 3 hour walks. And we encountered so many other dogs because I was just living in an area where there were so many dogs. And I wanted him to be really social. I wanted for him to just be okay in this world and to have a great time together with me. And so I had all the good intentions, right? Unfortunately, not only was 3 hours of walking each day way too much, but also we encountered dogs who were not helping him at all. And within 2 weeks, he had developed a massive case of leash reactivity. Massive, 300 feet or 200 meters. Insane. It was really insane. And I was living in the city, but on the border. So really green, very, very many dogs. And no open fields where you can see them in time. So very tricky. And I could say I'm at fault because it was my misguided way of dealing with him that got him to the point where he felt the need to tell every other dog, piss off. And that would be true. It doesn't help though. It doesn't help if I was at fault or if somebody else was at fault or if a free roaming dog crashing into us again and again. So it was the other owner's fault, or if you have a dog who had previous owners and came with a baggage into your home, that it was that person's fault. It doesn't help. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't change training. But what people often mean with that saying is that we as humans know what's happening when we see another dog, so we start tensing up even before the dog does. And since in training it's often just the dog who is in the focus, we are lacking behind and we are reacting sooner than our dog. And this puts tension between us, it puts tension on the leash, and that alerts the dog. Yes, that happens. But there is a huge but. It's not the reason for your dog going crazy. There has to be something else. Because when you take a dog who's completely safe with other dogs, completely confident, you can act out as much as you like. You can be tense as much as you like. Your dog will not escalate. He will if he had a problem in the first place. So, what I'm trying to tell you is, if you're experiencing any uncomfortable feelings in a situation with your dog, being in dog-on-dog encounters, being at any moment, take it, notice it, and work on it. It's okay to work on it. And there are special techniques, there are things you can do, but don't blame yourself, because blame is helping nobody. And when you are deciding to change something, give yourself time to learn. So often, I see people really putting enormous pressure on themselves because they are not figuring everything out on the first occasion they are hearing about it, or in the first training session they are using something new. That's okay. We have time to learn too. We are giving that time to our dogs, and we should give that time to ourselves. All right? So if this is tricky for you, get all the help you can. Definitely something you can work on. You can work on it together with your dog, and you can work on it in your time off. It's just one decision away. And the decision is definitely not to blame yourself, but to notice feeling uncomfortable and getting comfortable. All right?
If your dog stops listening to you as soon as you start your walk, you have zero chance of working on reactivity, so lunging, barking, growling at other dogs, things, people, whatever. So today, I'm going to show you 3 very effective and fun tricks to connect with your dog and start walks more calmly. Number 1, everything starts with the harness and the leash, right? So this is the first thing that you do when you take your dog for a walk. You put on harness and leash. And This is uncomfortable for a lot of dogs. And whenever this is true for your dog, you start the walk already stressed. So watch out for signs that your dog's uncomfortable with the procedure, like lifting a paw, turning the head away, leaning away, walking away, licking the lips, everything like that. Or if your dog bolts as soon as you take the harness off the shelf, that's a very obvious and very common sign that your dog's not 100% fine with the act of putting on the harness. What you can do is teach your dog to actually do the work for you. So put on the harness voluntarily. You don't have to do anything actually. Your dog can put the head through or get into position if you have a clip on the neck, which is awesome. And your dog will do all the work for you. This starts already engaging you too before you even go for the walk. So this is an awesome routine to start your walk together. And if your dog bounces off the walls as soon as you take the leash, you can do the next 2 tricks for the leash as well as for the door. So they work really well. And if your dog just needs to blow off some steam and you have a yard, let your dog run around. If your dog needs to do that, that's totally fine. It is a sign for overexcitement, that's for sure. And the more calm you start your walks, the more you will see this sign disappear. But for now, if your dog needs to do that, let him do that. Trick number 2, scatter treats at the door. And again, you can do that with the leash as well, right? So what this does is it stretches the neck, it takes the head down, it engages the nose and the brain, and all of these things calm your dog down. Do this for as long as it takes your dog to slow down, depending on how excited your dog was. So if the more excited your dog was, the more you want your dog to slow down before you continue with your walk, right? And or trick number 3 is the focus exercise. So you want your dog to be close to you and focus on you, so look at you. And you treat your dog for that. Now, in the beginning, your dog's gaze might wander, right? And that's totally fine. Bring it back to you. And you can do that with an attention cue, your dog's name. You can lure your dog with a treat. It's all is totally fine. The higher the reward rate, so the faster you give your dog the rewards, the quicker you will get a fully engaged dog who ignores everything else and will stick the full attention onto you. And that's what we want. Now, if you did this to attach the leash now, and then proceed to opening the door. And we do that gradually, right? So we start with the closed door and your dog gets treats for paying attention to you. Then we put the hand on the handle. Again, we bring the focus back and then we open the door gradually. And you might need to remind your dog that you want the attention again and again and again and again. That's totally fine. You're just learning, right? Your dog's just learning. It might need some time for your dog to get that you actually want the full attention the whole time. The more often you do this, the more focused your dog will become. Now, as the doors fully open, bring your dog's attention back to you and then make the first step out. And after a few steps, so after going through the door, again, reorient your dog towards you. So you want the dog's focus again, then you can do another scatter feed and you can close the door more calmly. And again, after you get your dog's attention one more time, you start your walk. And while this seems like a lot, it will get more and more fluent. So you will do this automatically and you will need less and less treats the more you do this. Try it out. You will see that you start your walks way calmer. Your dog will be way calmer. All beginnings are tricky. Whenever you want to start working with your dog on leash reactivities or lunging, barking, growling on leash whenever he sees another dog or even a person. Sometimes the whole thing seems so huge that we procrastinate, we don't start because it's overwhelming. And to get rid of the overwhelm and to actually start, we need our starting point. And that's what this video is about. So, the most important thing before you can start training on the real issue is that you stop your dog from going crazy. So whatever that means for your dog, it depends on when your dog's reacting, what your dog's reacting toward, what the triggers are, all those things. So find out what it is for your dog. When do you see your dog tense up and toward what? All right. And then you can start avoiding. Now, this is not a long-term solution. For some people it is, but most people don't want to avoid their whole lives. But it is a starting point. Because if your dog is constantly exercising, going crazy, your dog will get better and better and better at going crazy. He will not learn to stop that. So we need to interrupt that whole circle. And we do that with avoiding. And avoiding can mean whenever you see another dog, you walk in a different direction, or you walk in a curve, or you walk back, or you avoid whole areas, or you walk at times where you don't meet anybody. It really is just a strategy to give you time to actually build up a strategy to deal with the encounters, deal with the other dogs. It gives you time. And that is what the training actually needs. Time. So, what you will notice is that during this time of avoidance, your dog will calm down and walks will get fun again because you no longer need to scan the area all the time. All right? So, this is something that helps you relax a little bit. And during these avoidance times, you can start training. And the first and most important thing you need for your dog is a marker signal. It seems so tiny, but it's so powerful because it can catch your dog still doing the right thing. And there is always something right your dog is doing. I guarantee you that. I never guarantee anything, but I guarantee you that. All right? So you need a marker signal that tells your dog a reward is coming. Let me show you in real time how quick that is. So I have a few treats here. And what I'm going to do is I will teach her a new word that means you will get a treat out of my hand. Yep. 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 Did you see that she turned her head now? The moment she turned her head when I said the word actually indicated that she has already understood that. It was 3 treats in. So this is something really quick. And now she knows that whenever I say the word, she will get food out of my hand. Now, what you need next is you need to know what motivates your dog. You need to know what's important to your dog, what your dog's hobbies are, because all of those things can give you different reward options. And whatever you want to use in a situation, you can train on a marker signal. So you can have a marker signal for food out of your hand. You can have one for running after food. You can have one for playing with you. You can have one for running together. All of these things. So the next important step is to get your dog's hobbies. So see what your dog likes to do, and then see if you can use it as a reward, even in tricky situations, and then connect it with a marker signal like we did with the food. And don't forget that the motivation your dog has in the situation can always be part of your reward. Like, does your dog want to get closer to the other dog or go away from the other dog? Is he scared? Or is he frustrated?
And if you want to know more about that, we'll have a webinar on January 28th. So if you're not already registered, go to the description and register. It's free. And you will learn everything you need to know about why your dog is doing that, how you can stop it, and so on. It's more detailed than this video. But still, you now have a starting point. And with that, you can train your dog more and more and more of an alternative to going crazy.
The marker signal is so powerful, but it's completely useless if we don't have a plan of what we want to do with it. So let's see how we can get the best out of using a marker signal. So what do we need? We need a plan. We need to know what exactly we want to reward our dogs for doing, right? So we need to know how the behavior we want looks like. What does the dog do overall, and what are the steps? So we need to have a goal in mind. We need to know, all right, I want my dog to see another dog, look at me, and then walk away. We need the whole thing. And then we need the steps. So step 1 can be look at the other dog. Then the step can be look at me. Then the step can be let's walk away. And what happens next? So we need to plan the whole situation from start to finish. And when it comes to dog-on-dog encounters, situation can be from the first look at the other dog until the dog is gone. And we can set our marker points wherever our dog is in training and whatever we need to have our dog show more of, right? So if we are completely fresh in training, we will focus on just looking at the other dog without going crazy right away, right? So we are marking looking at the other dog. But since we don't want staring, we will relatively quickly switch to look at me. And then we will switch to let's walk away. So we mark later and later in the whole chain of events, right? And it's the same thing for everything, even small things like sit down or touch my hand with your nose. All of these things can have tiny little steps. And with our marker signal, we can focus on one of these steps or a few steps following each other, all right? And the second thing we absolutely need to make our marker signal useful at all, because without it, it's completely useless, is a reward. A reward gives the marker signal meaning. Without a reward, a marker signal has no meaning. It's nothing to the dog. It's just a sound. But with the reward, the dog knows, oh, that was the right thing. Now I will get my reward. And the reward can be anything. Food is the most easy to use. And we can vary food a lot. So my default reward is food. It's a primary need of our dogs. It works in very different ways. So we can make it more interesting, less interesting, and so on. But we can also use other things the dog finds motivating. So we can use things the dog wanted to do anyway, like watching some kind of wildlife, whatever, walking away, verbal praise, running up to another dog. It can be anything. It can be anything the dog likes in that situation. We want our dogs to ask us before they make any decision, like lunging, barking, growling, snapping at people, other dogs, things like that. We want them to trust us. We want them to trust in us. But for that, they have to learn that we are actually helping them feel better. And that's why in this video, we will look at how we can do that. And in the end, I will give you one thing that you need as a requirement to even start earning your dog's trust. So let's see how we can teach our dogs to rely on us and be sure that we can build them up if things go south. Number one, we need to offer social support and rewards when they are awesome and social support when they need it. So maybe things got a little bit out of hand. Maybe our dogs got scared. Maybe our dogs got angry. Then we need to give them social support. We have to build them back up, all right? We have to get them to a positive place again. And if they are awesome, like they stop in a dog on dog encounter or they just growl and don't slap, we need to reward them. Comment below what your dog did awesomely lately. I would love to know, and I think it's really important for us as well to get a positive perspective on our dogs again. The second thing we need to do for our dogs to be able to trust us is we need to prep them for tricky situations. And let's be honest, we usually know what situations are tricky, right? If we have a leash reactive dog, we know that whenever another dog shows up, things go south. And for that, we can offer our dogs strategies. And that's the third thing, we can offer escape strategies when things get too tricky, too difficult, and our dogs cannot do whatever we taught them before, or they are just not ready yet. And as I promised, there is one requirement to be able to do all that. And that is you need to be fluent in your dog's body language. That is actually what needs to happen first. And especially seeing your dog's threshold. So catching your dog before he escalates. Maybe you've heard me or one of my colleagues talk about distance and thresholds. It is basically the same thing. When we are talking about the point of no return, so the moment our dogs decide to go into that lunging, barking, growling, insane mode, that is the threshold. That is the distance that our dog can no longer be comfortable with the situation and that your dog is reacting. At that moment, we can forget training because it's no longer possible. Our dogs are no longer in a thinking mode. They are just reacting. And this is where so many people say training with treats doesn't work because they are waiting until the dog goes crazy and then they try to hold a treat in front of the nose and distract the dog. That can't work because the dog is no longer in the mood for training or in the mood for eating or in the mood for doing anything except yelling at whatever he's yelling at, right? So the key ingredient for training and for success in our training is to recognize that threshold. And it looks different for every dog, but we can look at specific body parts or specific changes in our dogs. And when we see them, we are getting close to the point of no return. For example, if our dog is completely relaxed, we will see a relaxed face, relaxed ears, no tension in the body. They are walking loosely. The tail is just in a natural position. Whatever that means for your dog can be very different. Like some dogs have curled up tails. Some dogs have the tail almost between their legs all the time. It's really different for every dog. But there is a neutral for every dog. And you just have to know your own. You don't have to know every dog. You just have to know your own for this moment. So, when we are approaching threshold, we see our dogs change. We see the face tensing up, the mouth closing, the ears getting forward and more stiff. The body posture gets more stiff. We see muscle tension. We might see hair standing up on the back of the dog. We might see the tail going up or down. We might see the body leaning forward or backward. Depending on the dog's feeling in the situation and depending on how safe he feels in his reaction. But we see changes, and those changes can sometimes be easily missed when we are directly in the situation because we are tense as well. We are expecting something bad to happen, so we are tense. And what we can do is we can either film ourselves. So put your phone in video mode and strap it to your chest, for example. Or ask somebody to come with you on a walk and film your dog. You will see these changes. Sometimes the dog relaxes afterward and doesn't react because the situation resolves itself. Maybe because the other dog walked a different direction or whatever. But on camera, we can really see what the dog looks like from every angle we want to see, right? Because very often we just see the dog from behind. And yes, we see a tail and we see the body rising a little bit and getting more stiff and leaning somewhere, but we don't see the face. Or we just see the side of the dog and whatever. So if we film it, we can analyze the footage later and even play it more slowly or reverse it and watch it again and just practice. And don't worry about learning to read every single dog. You just need to see your own dog's threshold for the moment. Later on, it might change. But for now, for training your dog, you just need to see your dog's threshold. And it is a gradual thing usually. So it's not like the dog is completely relaxed in 1 second and in the next second he is lunging, barking, growling. Usually the tension builds up gradually and we can see it rising and we can intervene at every step of the way, except when we are over threshold. So if you see your dog reaching threshold or tensing up, you can ask your dog to do something different. Something that helps him resolve the situation in a way that makes him more comfortable. Most of the time, that means bringing more distance in between him and whatever he's uncomfortable with. But this has to be something the dog already knows. So, for example, if I want my dog to come with me, I have to teach a cue for come with me. It can look very different for every dog, and you have to find what's suitable for your dog. But you have to train it beforehand. And with that, you get a really awesome tool to stop your dog from reacting in the first place. And that is what sustainable training is all about. We have to teach our dogs what to do instead of going crazy, instead of that what we don't want to see, right? So why don't you tell me in the comments how you saw the threshold in your dog, what it looked like, and if it was easy, and what alternative you wanted your dog to do in the situation. And if you need help with that, go to the description, book a free call. We see how I can help so that you can help your dog feel more happy, more safe, and more confident, and therefore make life easier. The biggest mistakes dog owners make when they are trying to train their dog to stop reacting to other dogs or people is that they wait until the dog is reacting. They wait until the dog is lunging, barking, growling. And tell me in the comments if you see yourself in that as well. I definitely did when I was just a dog owner. And even some trainers still do that. So don't worry about it. It's just a very, very, very common mistake, all right? And what happens is the dog is already lunging, barking, growling, and the humans try to wave a treat or a toy in front of the dog's nose, or even try to correct the dog, which only makes the situation for your dog worse. Your dog not only practices the reactivity, because that's what he's doing, he also learns that whenever an uncomfortable situation arises, his caregiver becomes uncomfortable for him as well. It makes your relationship crack, it makes the other dog worse, it makes the situation worse. It's never a good idea. So what we need is the moment before your dog escalates. And there is always a moment where your dog notices another dog or human and is still relaxed. And that's the moment where training can take place, where you can actually change something. Because what you want in training is that your dog learns to associate another dog with a relaxed feeling, with something different, with positive emotions, and learns how to do something else. That also means that your dog has to practice that and not the reactivity. Because what we practice, we get good at, right? And if your dog is only practicing reactivity, your dog will only get better at reacting. So try to catch your dog still relaxed, or at least still able to notice here when he sees another dog or smells another, right? Your dog is fine with the first 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5 dogs, people, bikes you pass, but suddenly at the 6th, your dog goes crazy. Out of nowhere, he shows the full display, lunging, barking, growling, completely out of control. And you have no way of knowing when it will happen. So this is a very, very tricky situation. And today we're going to look at how we can prevent it and why this is happening. Because this can go wrong so fast, right? You can't see when it is coming and you don't know how to prevent it, it can go wrong, right? Now, I will give you my absolute favorite tool that helps you see it reliably a little bit later. But first, let's see why this is happening. And you're not alone. This is happening so commonly that it has its own name. It's called trigger stacking. Because every single one of these things you meet or persons or whatever, so every dog, every person, every bike, every car, every whatever is a trigger. So it triggers an emotion in your dog, it triggers a behavior, it triggers whatever. And when we see one after another, it's stacking up. So your dog is trying to hold on to his wits and trying to contain himself and trying to be a very well-behaved dog, but there comes a point where this is no longer possible. Your dog is losing control of his own actions, and that's when you see the explosion. Now, this is what happens to us as well, right? If we get triggered by stuff like on social media, comments or whatever, and we get triggered again and again and again and again, we will type something, right? At one point. And this point is where we see the escalation in our dogs. Now, what we need to do as guardians is that we need to see it happening sooner. So we need to see our dogs getting into trouble earlier so that we can start helping our dogs. And we do not have to wait until the craziness happens and therefore prevent it. Now, what we need for that is we need to be fluent in doggy body language. And for that, let's start with a baseline. So, what does your dog look like when he's walking completely relaxed? And if your dog's always a little bit tense when you go outside, this is where you need a stress relief program. So, something for anti-stress, right? But if you still want to establish the baseline, take your dog to a quiet area and see if this changes something. If your dog gets a little bit less tense there, or if your dog can relax there. If not, do the stress reduction first. What we want to see in the baseline is what does your dog's body look like when he is walking in a relaxed way. So be as thorough as possible with your description. Write it down. And write down everything you can see. What does the body look like? So, especially the muscle tension under the fur. What does the tail look like? Is it high or low? How high or how low? How is its shape, right? How bouncy is your dog's gait? How does the ears look? Is your dog panting? And if so, how open is the mouth? How wide is the mouth open? All of these things. If you see your dog watching something, how do the eyes look? How does the face look? If you can see the face, right? And then as you continue on your walk, see how your dog changes. So really watch how the full body looks like during your walk. So whenever you meet a dog or a person or a car or a bike or a bird or whatever, it doesn't matter. Even if your dog only barks at other dogs, watch everything. Watch your dog and watch out for these little changes. So does the tail go up or down? Do the ears go back or forward? Do you see wrinkles in your dog's face? Again, if you can see the face. Most of the time we cannot see the face because we are at the dog's side or behind the dog or whatever. But if you can see the dog's face because you're standing somewhere and watching something, whatever. Are there wrinkles, especially around the mouth or the eyes? If you're behind your dog, you can see the forehead or between the ears. Are there folds, so skin folds? And have they been there before? Can you see more muscles under the fur? Is the gait more stiff than before? All of these little things. When do they start to change and how do they change? And lastly, is your dog changing his behavior? So, is your dog sniffing more or less? Is your dog watching things more or less? Is your dog engaging with you more or less? So, is your dog checking in on a regular basis? And did he do that before? All of these things can tell you when things become increasingly uncomfortable for your dog. So watch out for them. And keep an eye on what your dog's checking out. Is your dog checking out other dogs, bikes, people, cars? Again, all of this can give you clues about what's actually triggering your dog. Now, don't worry. You don't have to see all of these things immediately, and you don't have to be fluent in doggy body language right away. This takes time to learn. Like with every new language, it takes practice, it takes time to learn, and you can set yourself up for success. What really helps is having a professional with you, because we spend a lot of time practicing this, right? And we can help you. But what you definitely need is one tool, and that is video. Video is an absolute must-have in learning doggy body language. Your own dogs. Don't worry about every other dog. You can worry about that later, but now it's your dog. And you can make your life pretty easy. You can strap your phone to your chest and just film your dog. Or you can ask your partner or a friend to film your dog on your walks, right? And then you watch the videos and see how your dog progresses, right? How your dog's body language changes during the walk. And then in the next walk, you know what you have to watch out for, right? And that's how we learn. We teach our brains to focus on what we have seen before. So we now know, okay, this is what I have to watch out for. It's like if you are interested in buying a new car and you like a white pickup truck. You have never noticed a white pickup truck on the street before. But now that you're interested in buying one, you will see them everywhere. And that's what your brain does. It narrows in on the things you're interested in. And if you're focusing on seeing the changes in your dog in the videos beforehand, you will see them on your walks. Try it out. It will maybe take some time, but it's a lot easier and you will get there way faster if you do it with video. That's the power of technology. Now, if you have practiced that a little bit and you now see your dog's changes, you can use all of this information and you can also see what your dog's actually triggered by, right? You now know if it's really only dogs or if it's birds, wildlife, people, dogs, cars, bikes, whatever. And you take all this information and you put it into a plan. Because we need all this information to actually use in our training, right? Now, what you can do is you build a training plan that gives your dog a strategy that makes him feel better with the situation, with the triggers, so that you don't have to worry anymore about any explosions, about your dog going crazy, about your dog not knowing what to do, about you not knowing what to do, because now you have a strategy. If you aren't clear in your training, your dog will keep aggressing, ignoring you, or even becoming more and more afraid of you. So let's see how we can become more clear with our dogs, and in the end, we'll see what to train first in the example of leash reactivity. But first we need to understand what we have to do to become crystal clear for our dogs. Let's start with our cues, our signals, or if you want to call it that, commands. I don't like that word because it does something with us. But whatever you want to call it, what you need to do is you need to know what these cues mean or what you want your dog to do whenever you give them. So, for example, if you want your dog to look at you and you use the name, that's clear. But if you use the name for scolding your dog, recalling your dog, telling your dog to look at you, it becomes a very mixed message. And we want to be clear, right? We want our dogs to respond immediately with the right thing. And for that, we need to be precise. So use your name for an attention cue, or better yet, train an attention cue separately and train a recall and use them whenever you need your dog to do one or the other. Then you need to decide what you want your dog to continue doing or learn. So what you want to allow or not. Like if you allow your dog on the sofa, that's fine. But that means that your dog is allowed on the sofa and not your dog is allowed on the sofa except if he's dirty. Right? So yes means yes. And if you want to have some things removed from your dog's behavior, so for example, your dog is lunging, barking, growling at other dogs, you need to address it and teach your dog something else. And not one day ignore it, one day scold your dog, the third day you train an alternative. That's not clear. So assess if these things are bothering you. If it's just something you would train because everybody else tells you to, forget it, because you will not stick to it. Does it bother you? Then yes, you should train it, but then be consistent and be clear to your dog that you want that to change, right? And then of course you need to tell your dog what you have decided, right? You need to tell your dog what you want. It's always easier to do something than to stop doing something or not do something. Our brains do not understand. No, it's the same thing for our dogs. We have to do something. And if we're just standing and watching a video or sitting and watching a video and breathing, that's doing something. Not doing something or not doing anything would mean you're dead. It's the same thing for our dogs. So if you want your dog to stop barking at other dogs, teach your dog to walk away instead. Or teach your dog to look at you and touch your hand with his nose or whatever. So teach your dog what you want to see. That's a lot clearer than teaching your dog to stop something, right? And as for leisure activity, you need a clear strategy. So you need to teach your dog what to do whenever another dog or a person shows up on the horizon, right? And it has to be the same. Yes, it can vary when you're already very practiced in that one strategy, but in the beginning you need to have one really set and your dog really, really well practiced in that one strategy. Every trick boosts your dog's confidence and your relationship as long as it's trained in a friendly way. But not all of them are actually helpful in day-to-day life with a reactive or fearful dog. So let's have a look at 3 tricks you can train your dog that help you in everyday life in tricky situations and if your dog gets a little bit out of hand. Trick number 1 is a target, and you can use any target your dog likes. You can just try them out. And there is something really easy to train. Like, what would you do if I suddenly reach out my hand like this? Did you look at the hand? That's what our dogs do. As soon as we show them our hands, suddenly, as long as they're not afraid of the movement, they will look at the hand and we can start shaping our nose target or a shoulder target or whatever. We can also use other body parts as a target. We can use getting between our legs, so parking. And all of these can be useful to get the dog out of a tricky situation. They can also be useful to place the dog a certain way to protect him from people reaching out or from tricky situations, when things get too close, everything where our dog needs a little bit more steadiness and needs to lean onto us. Also, the connection, the physical connection, triggers an oxytocin release in our dogs and ourselves as long as it's not forced. So we can give our dogs positive emotions with these targets, and we can also use them to put a little pressure on them so they can lean in and things like that. That makes a scary situation easier. And of course, we can use them to lead our dogs out of the situation if we want to leave it completely. The same thing goes for the next trick, and that's a look at me. And I do not necessarily need my dogs to look into my eyes. Very many fearful dogs don't like that. I take everything the dog can actually do. So if they only can look at me when I have my treat pouch on and they look at the treat pouch, that's fine. I just want them to refocus from whatever they're looking at to redirect their view onto me. That interrupts every behavior I don't want. So be it stalking wildlife, being staring at another dog, being growling at people, whatever it is, if I can redirect my dog onto me, I can stop that. And it can also help to calm down. If I just want my dog to look at me and eat and eat and eat and eat, I can watch the excitement level go down. Try it out. It's really fun to see, because I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't done it myself. All right. And the third one is also an escape strategy, and it helps calm your dog down. And that's either a let's go or a go sniff. It again depends on the situation, and it depends on your dog. Does your dog need to leave the situation, or does your dog just need something to distract his attention, right? If I take my dog's nose down and let him sniff something, he can focus on that, he can ignore everything else, and he can calm down because he's using his nose and his brain again. If I need to leave a situation as fast as possible because, for example, I see another dog coming towards me and already staring, already threatening, already giving warning signals, they want to leave the situation, but my dog's already in a stare mode. If I have trained a let's go really well, I can get my dog out of that and leave the situation. And then I can start the sniffing, right? So I can combine them as well. You see, all of these have a very, very practical use in day-to-day life. And they are way more useful than the usual stuff the dogs learn, like a heel or a leave it. You need to accept your dog for who he is before you can start training, because we can't just change everything. And sometimes I have to burst bubbles when we have appointments, because some people would like to change everything about their dog, and it's not realistic. So ask yourself the question, and it is really one of my first questions I ask in a free discovery call, is what would happen if nothing changes? And yes, there are some things that just can't stay the way they are, right? If your dog is like, whenever you start brushing him and your dog immediately bites or something like that, that can't stay like it is. I absolutely get that. But your dog has a personality and quirks that might stay the way they are. The behavior is maybe getting better with training, and if it doesn't, it might be a reason to check the training. But there are things that are just the way they are. Like my Sammy, he is a very sensitive, actually a highly sensitive dog. He will never stop being a highly sensitive dog. Yes, he can get used to grooming, he can get used to people touching him and the vet and things like that. But he will always have issues, for example, with wet floor. Like if we are outside walking and it was raining and the ground is wet, he will always have issues and walk like some kind of,
whatever. It looks a little funny, but I know that he just doesn't like that. So for me to try to get him to like rain and try to get him to be outside for hours and hours when it's raining would just be a waste of energy, to be honest, because some things we can just accept and we can change so many things with training. But if we don't like the personality our dogs bring with them, the more important question might be, is it worth the energy? Or would this dog be happier in a different family? And I'm not saying rehome every dog because they have some kind of issue, all right? That's not true. I have taken in all of my dogs who had issues, no matter if they were foster dogs or my dogs, all of them had issues. And we worked on them and it was wonderful and all of that. But the personality was always something I accepted or I tried to accept. Like, you cannot make a Molosser out of a herding dog. It will not happen. You can get your herding dog to be relaxed and chilled at home, but your herding dog will always have a higher excitability. They will always have a little bit more energy than like a bull mastiff has, right? That is just a given. So if you don't like an excited dog, don't get an excited dog. All right. What I want to share with you today is just that some things you can actually accept. And I want you to think about what you actually want to change for your dog and with your dog and what you can accept. And also if what you want to change is something that your dog can actually change. Like, you have your personality too, right? And if you are a very sensitive person, for example, somebody telling you don't be so sensitive, how does that make you feel? Is that something that you feel like you can actually do or you want to do? It's the same thing for your dog. And very often after we learn to accept and love our dogs unconditionally, training works so much better.
Reactivity gets worse when our dogs live stressful lives. And to be honest, it's the same thing for us. So let's see how we can relax together, shall we? And all of the following, you can either do all of them as a ritual, right? Or you can pick and choose whatever fits into your schedule. Don't stress about it, right? Just do what feels good and what helps you and your dog relax. First and all-time favorite is get into nature. And don't worry if your dog cannot do that. Stick with me. We will see other options in just a few moments. But getting into nature is just something that can help us relax a lot and forget about the challenges of everyday life. Now, if your mind starts racing, try to bring your attention back to the present moment, to the beauty that's surrounding you, to whatever's going on. Try to see what happens around you and what your dog's doing, right? What's your dog interested in? This is not a race. Take your time, slow down, maybe even do a picnic. And if you want to do that, bring something to chew or to lick for your dog, like a stuffed Kong or some kind of chew bone or whatever, and a sandwich for yourself so you can just share food together. It's a really lovely bonding experience. Or you can check out flowers or leaves or mushrooms or whatever. Those things we just take for granted. Take a closer look. See the symmetry, see the beauty of it. It's so fascinating. And plan enough time for these walks. So you don't have to worry, right? If you see something interesting and you want to spend a little more time with it, you can actually do that, all right? So what if your dog is like too excited outside yet and can't really go with you on these walks? Or maybe the weather is bad and you just can't go into the woods or whatever. Start scent work or just search games with your dog, and you can do those indoors. This is just a pretty slow activity, and it uses your dog's nose and a large part of your dog's brain. So your dog will get comfortably tired and relaxed. So this is exactly what you want. And again, if you notice your mind just going back to work or whatever, bring your awareness back to your dog. Really watch your dog sniffing. What route is your dog taking? What objects is your dog checking out? Can you see how the wind is influencing your dog? Can you see drafts solely by your dog's behavior while sniffing? Those are all things you can pay attention to so that your mind will not wander off to busy or stressful things, right? And after one of those activities is a wonderful time for a nap, right? Maybe your dog will need a little bit of help to wind down, and for that, chewing and licking again are awesome. So maybe you need a stuffed toy, like a Kong or a licky mat, and you can prepare them in advance, or you can include the preparation in your ritual. Both is fine, and whenever your dog takes a nap, you can either join your dog or take the time to do something relaxing yourself. And that can be anything, like read a book or take a bath or do yoga or meditation. And especially the last two really affect my dog Sammy. Whenever I do these deep relaxation things like yin yoga or meditation, he actually picks up on my relaxation and he starts falling asleep way deeper and way faster than he would normally, even if he isn't feeling 100%. So we can use that. We can use our own relaxation to help our dogs get into a relaxed mode as well, which is awesome, right? Comment below what your favorite relaxation routine is. I'd love to know. Maybe it's something completely different from the things I have told you so far. And of course, when we talk about relaxation, we can also do active relaxation with our dogs. So we can actively help them get into a relaxed state if they like it. So, for example, we can use massages or just offering them body contact or doing telepathy touch, anything like that. And again, really watch what your awareness is doing and bring it back to what your hands are doing on your dog if it drifts away, because your dog will notice and so will you. So the whole experience gets way more intense if you're focused on you and your dog. And after a while of practicing this, you will notice that you have both more energy and more nerves to actually get into training to get rid of the reactivity, right? Are you living with a strong dog or a strong breed and you wonder how training could look like if your dog is lunging, barking, growling at other dogs or people, which is not only really embarrassing as it is with a small dog, but people react very differently when you have a strong dog than when you have a Chihuahua, right? So today we're going to talk about what we need with strong dogs or strong breeds to work on leash reactivity and what we don't need. And we start with what we don't need, and that is any form of correctional device. So e-collars, prong collars, choke chains, all of these things. They are not only not necessary, they are forbidden in very many countries and for a reason. And if they were necessary, strong dogs in those countries would be untrainable. And they're not. Right? If you think about Rottweilers, for example, Rottweilers are German breed, and in Germany, those tools are forbidden. So how would they train their Rottweilers? They do it with just regular equipment. It's possible. So this is something that we come across very often. We think all these things have to be on our dogs, or we need to correct them, or dominate them, or be the boss, or whatever, because they are strong. But what that does is it destroys our relationship and it makes the dogs trust us less. Now, if we want them to listen to us in those situations and handle them the way we want them to handle them, they have to trust us. And if we constantly give them pain or even discomfort, how would they trust us? It's not possible. So, this is really something you don't need. And before you come to what we do need, don't forget to like and subscribe if you like this video. What we do need is we need strategies for our dogs to make situations easier and to give them what they want. So our dogs are reacting for a reason, right? Mostly it's because they want the other dog to be further away because they are overwhelmed with how close this dog is. Now, if they yell at the other dog, the owner will very likely take the dog away. Maybe they would have taken the dog away anyway, but our dogs don't know that, right? So they are successful with that technique. And if we want them to do something differently, we have to provide them with the same outcome. So if we want them to stop lunging, barking, growling, and we want them to come with us or sniff the ground or touch our hand or whatever, we have to provide them with the distance they need as a result of what we want them to do. All right. Now, this is exactly the same thing as we do with smaller dogs. The difference might be that if we screw up, and we will screw up, the better we plan our training, the less it will happen, but it will happen. We are not perfect. Our dogs are not perfect. We will screw up. All right. And if we screw up and our smaller dog gets into lunging, barking, growling once again, it's probably not that bad, right? If that dog would bite, we need to have him muzzled as well as big dog. But we will have no trouble holding them. It's embarrassing, but it's not that bad. If we have a big, strong dog or a breed with a bad reputation, like PTs and Safis, people will react differently to our dogs reacting. All right. So we might hear some bad comments, even worse than with a small dog. And we have a lot more trouble holding those dogs. Even strong men sometimes really have trouble holding those dogs. If you take a Great Dane with 100 kilograms, that's difficult to hold, right? And even smaller dogs with a lot of muscle mass can be difficult to hold. And that's when we need additional equipment. What I like to do, and this works for almost all dogs, is just use 2 leashes, one in the back and one in the front. And if I need to get my dog under control, I can shorten the front leash and turn the dog towards me. Again, if this doesn't work because the difference in weight is so high, then we might need things like a gentle leader or stuff. But this is a tool that can work nicely, but it has to be introduced with a trainer. It has to be used very carefully because it can do a lot of damage to your dog's neck if it's used incorrectly. So always do that with a professional. And if you need help with that, go to the description, book a free call. We see how I can help you get rid of the issue and move on, right? Because you got a dog to enjoy your time together and not to struggle.
Are you afraid that you might lose control of your reactive dog, that you might not be able to hold on to the leash when your dog really goes at it again? You're not alone. This is a very common struggle dog parents have, especially when they have a strong reactive dog. Some dog breeds, especially, are so muscular that they can throw us off balance very easily. So, in this video, we're going to talk about some techniques you can use to be very safe and have your dog secure on your leash. But first things first, if your dog would damage another living being, you need to teach a muzzle first. It's just a safety measure and it gives you a little bit of peace of mind, right? If you're absolutely sure that your dog cannot harm somebody else, you will have a more relaxed walk. But a muzzle doesn't keep your dog safe from other dangers, like running into a busy street or tipping over a cyclist, things like that. So we need to be able to hold our dogs, right? Now, let's see how we can do that. One thing we can work with is your stance. Because if you're standing like this, you can very easily lose control of your dog if you pull, right? Suddenly. But you can get a safer stance. Like if you have one leg back, one leg in the front, both hands on the leash, and you have soft knees and soft elbows. So you can have a little bit more flexibility if your dog suddenly pulls and he cannot throw you off balance as easily because you have the front foot that keeps you up straight. The weight, however, is on your back leg, on this one, because like this, you can lean back and you can lean into your dog's weight with your own weight. And again, you have the soft elbows, so you can give your dog a little bit more space and then pull back in a soft way. Then you can help yourself with using 2 leashes, so a double safety line. You have one leash attached to the back of your dog's harness and one leash either on your dog's front clip, on your dog's collar, or even on a head halter. A head halter, like a gentle leader or a halter, has to be trained with the professionals. Do not try something on your own, get professional help. And if you want to do that together, go to the description, book a free call, we see how I can help. But those things can be dangerous if they are used incorrect. So be on the safe side, do it with a professional. With this front leash attached, you can turn your dog around if you have your leash like this. So you can turn your dog, if this is the front, turn your dog, right? And this is your usual leash. And for the last thing you can do, use a leash that is not slippery, like this one. This is a rubber leash, and it's one of my absolute favorites. I like to use rubber leashes because they are not slippery. You can hold on to them really well, right? Use a relatively short leash because the wider the range between you and your dog, the less control you will have and the more weight your dog can throw into the leash. So I like 3 meters to 5 meters, which is, I think, 6 to 10 feet. I'm not 100% sure, so don't nail me on that. But just try out what feels comfortable for you. And then you need a strategy, because the more you experience having a good connection with your dog, the better you will do in a tricky situation.
Have you ever wondered if you should use one tool or another, or how to choose between all the different things that are out there for reactive dogs? Today we're going to talk about exactly that. What can we use for training our reactive dogs? And what's the most important thing when starting to train a reactive dog? All right, so the most important thing is, of course, our dog. And sometimes, especially when we're talking about leash reactivity against other dogs, we might need a second dog. So a helper dog who gives us the opportunity to stage situations we want to work on. And I like to use this guy, or I decided it's a girl, and her name is Ellie. And Ellie is a very great helper dog because she doesn't react to anything. She doesn't need anybody to hold her. She doesn't move away. So she is just perfect for beginner dogs. She is also very realistic. So most dogs take her for a real dog. And I let her sit in a car next to my dog, so she smells of dog as well. But this can be a really easy point to start. And of course, when we're talking about leash reactivity, we need something where we can attach a leash too. Right? And what I like to use is a harness, something like this. All right. This is just a Y-shaped harness. It's like this on the dog. The head is up there. And it has one specialty, and that's this thing. It has a V or an X or whatever you want to call it on the belly, and that prevents slipping to the side. That's why I like to use harnesses like this. And it's a Y-shaped harness because if we look at it here, whenever we have a harness with a chest strap that goes like this, it blocks the shoulder. It's the same thing with most front clip harnesses. They block the shoulder and the movement is impaired. Also, when we have a chest strap that goes across the chest, it can slip up as soon as the leash tightens and we choke the dog. We don't want that, right? So we have a Y-shaped harness. It leaves the shoulder free and it cannot slip up. To test if it fits right, we can put a finger through the ring here and feel what we are actually touching on our dogs. If we feel bone, so if it's hard, then it fits correctly. If it's soft, much like if it's here and it's soft, it's on the trachea and it will choke the dog. And of course, it can't chafe anywhere. So it has freedom here behind the elbow and it doesn't slip much. All right. And when we talk about harnesses, we talk about leashes. So what I like to do is I like to use long leashes. This one's actually a bit too long. It's 10 meters. I like to use something more like 5 meters or 3 meters. It depends on how strong the dog is and how strong owner is. And of course, when we're talking about biting, we're talking about a muzzle. A muzzle is also great for dogs who need a little bit more space because people tend to give more space when they see a muzzled dog. Not with every dog, but sometimes it helps. And the most important thing with a muzzle is it's large enough so the dog can pant freely and in best cases can even yawn. That would mean the mouth can open fully. But since this is a wire muzzle, even if the mouth is fully open, the dog cannot bite, right? And this one, it's deep enough so the dog could open the muzzle fully, but it's a little bit too long. And of course, the sides of the muzzle shouldn't hang below the dog's head. It should go about here. This is just a stuffed dog and it's a little bit tricky to attach a muzzle to it. But with a real dog, we should watch out for those things, all right? And then we want our dogs to do stuff, so we need to reinforce what we want to see. We need to reward our dogs. And that means we need treats or toys or stuff like that, and it has to be easily accessible. So what I like to do is I like to have a treat pouch on my side or something like this, and I can access it very easily, right? It's a lot more efficient than if I start doing this and trying to get something out of my pants. A lot more difficult. And until I have my treat out, the situation is over again, right? So I need easily accessible treats or toys. And now we are talking about the superpower, because if we want to reward our dog, we need to capture the right exact moment where our dog does something great. It's easy if our dog stands right next to us. We can just put a treat in the mouth. But if our dogs are a little bit farther away, we need to be able to tell them, yes, this was right. And that's where this thing comes in. This is a clicker, and you can use a marker word or a clicker, it doesn't matter. But it is the one thing that is a real game changer when we're talking about being precise in training. And being precise makes results a lot quicker. So that's why I love using a marker word or a clicker. And those are overall the basics I need to start training my reactive dog.
People often believe that when small dogs lunge and bark and growl and even bite to show aggression, that they have a huge ego or even delusion of grandeur, right? But that's not even close to the truth. So today we're going to talk about why small dogs show aggression, how we can help them when they're already in it, or prevent it before it's happening. So let's start with why
aggression happens in the first place. When we see aggression, we're dealing with emotions. And the emotions behind aggression are fear or frustration. And you might not be able to see both of them because, of course, in the display itself, we see the rage. Because fear and frustration turn into rage whenever they build up and do not have an outlet or a solution or whatever. So a situation does not resolve itself. And for small dogs, there are actually a number of situations where they feel fear or frustration, and those situations happen more frequently than for larger dogs or are even unique to small dogs. So let's see what situations we have with small dogs, right? And don't get me wrong, whenever larger dogs get into these situations, they have usually the same emotions. But you will see very quickly why the situations don't happen as often to larger dogs. So small dogs very often are not taken seriously. So they have the same behavior, right? In the beginning, they try to show us that they are uncomfortable with something, right? And they do this the same way a large dog might. So they try to avoid whatever is happening to them. Like they are moving away, they are looking away, they are licking their lips, they are lifting a paw, like whatever. Sometimes we don't see that because we are so far away with our faces that we cannot see that. Or we just don't realize what's happening, like we don't realize it with larger dogs. But the next thing many dogs do is they give us warnings, like they are snarling, they are growling, they are air snapping. And this is something that is most often taken very seriously with a large dog, not so much with a small dog. So there are a variety of videos in the internet where people make fun of small dogs trying to bite a hand that is teasing them or even hurting them, right? So this is considered funny. Of course, the only thing the small dog can do when warnings don't work is become more and more and more obvious with those warnings. And that's when we see aggression happening, right? Because yes, moving away would be another solution, but very often in these situations, the small dog cannot move away because he's held or cornered or whatever. So we as humans overwhelm the dog because we're not taking the dog seriously. And we are often doing something to the dog without asking. So, for example, we want to move our dog, right? Because we are doing something and the dog is in the way and, well, we have a small dog here. So what are we doing with a small dog? Well, let's just take him and put him somewhere else. We would never ever do that with a Great Dane. We would never ever do that with a Saint Bernard. We would never ever do that with a Rottweiler. Mostly because we can't. Right? Those dogs are just too heavy to do that. But with a small dog, we can just pick them up and put them somewhere. Now, let's put ourselves in our dog's shoes. Let's imagine somebody would just pick you up and put you somewhere. That's not really nice, right? Without giving you a warning or without asking you for permission. Same thing as with picking them up. So let's say our small dog is like next to me and sniffing somewhere and I want to continue with my walk, right? So the dog is doing something, not paying attention to me, and I go over there and I take the dog and pick him up. I did not even give him a warning. And this is not over-exaggerating anything. This is something we see every single day on our walks. This is what's happening to our small dogs. And movement impairments, so restricting the movement, is something that is highly, highly frustrating. And whenever this becomes uncomfortable as well, like sometimes we are not very gentle doing these things, right? And our hands are large and our dogs are small. So maybe we are putting pressure on the dog's belly, or we are just doing something that might not be comfortable for our dogs, that might inflict pain or at least discomfort. So that's when the dogs very often develop an aversion or a fear of hands. So we do not only have frustration, we also have fear. And if we have a small dog that is not very well socialized, that small dog might bring fear into the whole story from the beginning. So what I want to say with all this is just something that would enrage us as humans as well. And of course, if we see aggression in those situations or aggression in any other situation, it might be because of these things we do to our dogs, right? Same thing goes for any handling, grooming, whatever. So, like if we have nail clipping or whatever, for a small dog, we can just take the small dog, even hold the head, and then we do the nail clipping because it's very easy to hold the dog, right? We cannot do this with a Great Dane or a Saint Bernard or a Rottweiler because this would look like something like this. And even then, those dogs are way stronger, so they can just wriggle out of our grip, right? A small dog just cannot do shit about it. So we can just do whatever we want to them. And if they feel discomfort, they can't do anything about it. So it's our duty as their guardians to actually take their feelings and their comfort into consideration, right? Same thing goes for our walks in general. If we just compare what the world looks like for a small dog, just on a regular walk, right? If you live in a city or even if you live somewhere in a rural area, the world looks very, very large from a very low perspective, much larger than it looks from a higher perspective. So if we compare a small dog to a larger dog, the world just looks bigger. Everything's bigger. So everything's potentially more scary. And again, the better socialized a dog is and the less bad experiences a dog had, the easier these things will be. But once again, small dogs have a huge disadvantage here because bad experiences happen more easily to small dogs because a small dog becomes the victim of uncomfortable things more easily by larger dogs. Not because the large dogs are evil or bad or whatever, just because of size differences and of playstyle differences. Like if a Labrador, even as a puppy, right, runs around and plays like a Labrador plays with a Chihuahua and gives the Chihuahua a butt jack or a body jack, this can actually hurt the Chihuahua a lot. Or if a larger dog just playfully puts a paw on a smaller dog, this might actually hurt the smaller dog or scare the smaller dog because the paw is almost as large as the small dog's head. Right? That can be really scary. So once again, those experiences might be enough to scare the dog or to tell the small dog that other dogs are actually dangerous. So from now on, we have a dog who is telling the world, please don't come close to me because I'm afraid. And what we as humans see is a small dog barking. And we interpret that as, oh, that dog has a huge ego. He even barks at large dogs. Yes, because he's afraid, not because he has a huge ego. Okay? So, what can we do? First of all, we need to take our dog seriously, no matter what size the dog is, right? So if you see your dog lifting a lip and snarling at you, take your dog seriously, even if your dog cannot seriously hurt you, in theory, right? Your dog doesn't see it the same way. The Chihuahua means the same thing as the Staffy or the German Shepherd or whatever you want to take in comparison, right? The next thing is, I'm totally fine with lifting up small dogs. That can be a huge advantage in everyday life, in training, in management, in whatever, right? So like if we have those scary situations, like we're in the city and there are lots of people and we're with our dogs and we kind of need to get from A to B and whatever. Yes, we can avoid the people, or we can pick our dogs up and carry them through. Yes, that's a huge advantage of a small dog, but we need to teach our small dogs that this is an option and they can feel safe on our arms. So the first part of that is that we actually tell them what we want to do before we do it, and then we give them the option to say no. So if I want to do this with her and I tell her, come to me, and she comes to me, that's okay. If she were to walk away, that would mean no, and that would for me be a sign to take my hands away. So yes, we need to take our dogs seriously and we need to treat them with respect. So no more picking the dog up and just placing him somewhere because we can. We can also teach the dog to follow our target. So this is not more work for us, right? It's the same hand movement, but it's way easier for the dog. And for every grooming thing and stuff, we can teach our dogs medical training. So we can teach our dogs that they can opt out at any point, and that actually takes the necessity to bite away, because they can just tell us, hey, I need a break, and we then give them a break. And for reactivity aggression on leash, like against other dogs or people or whatever, it's the same thing. We give them the space they need and we start implementing other strategies that help them feel better. So it's always about changing emotions. It's always about realizing what our dogs are going through, why our dogs are behaving this way, what's the emotion behind it, and then how can we change it? How can we help them? And that is sustainable training, right?
Positive versus balanced dog train. Both methods work, both methods sound nice, but there is a huge difference between them when it comes to affecting your dog's quality of life and your relationship. So before we dive deep into both methods, I want to ask you a question. How important is your dog's quality of life and that he trusts you even in tricky situations? We come back to why this is important a little bit later. So let's look at the methods. Positive-based training or fear-free or force-free training, all of these are the same. And they focus on using positive reinforcement primarily. What that means is we catch our dogs doing something nice and reward our dogs. So it's a big name for just rewarding your dog. And with that, increase the behaviors we want to see our dogs do, right? Like your dog is sitting next to you, looking at you very politely, and you give him a treat. That is positive reinforcement. But let's see how that looks like in a very stressful but very common situation. Your dog is lunging, barking, growling on leash whenever he sees another dog. And you're not alone in this. This is one of the most common issues we run into as pet dog parents. And positive reinforcement starts where the dog is still doing well. So your dog is still walking on a loose leash, looking but not staring, checking in with you, sniffing, being calm in any kind of way, and we reward that, like giving him a treat or whatever. And in most cases, we teach what we want to see beforehand, so we actually can ask our dogs what to do in the situation instead of lunging, barking, growling. So what the dog learns is that another dog, this other dog, gives him something positive, a reward. And that means that the other dog gets connected with positive feelings. So our dog learns another dog means good things, right? And when our dogs have learned that, we start pushing our dog's comfort zone. So we train in different areas, different places with different dogs. And let's be honest, real life provides us with those situations anyway. So this is just how we progress with this training. But you might want to ask yourself, well, what if things go wrong, right? We cannot be perfect. We cannot get 100%. And sometimes we mess up and things go south. What if the dog reacts? Well, we leave the situation. We get our dogs out of that situation, we recap, we see what went wrong, right? So we understand that we are the ones putting our dogs in the situation, and if we mess up, we have to clean it up, right? So we have to change something in the approach so that our dogs no longer have to escalate because the situation's it, right? Now, balanced dog training also uses corrections. That's a huge difference to force-free. So some kind of stimulus that hurts or scares the dog. And that's called positive punishment. So the dog acts out, experiences something uncomfortable, and stops acting out from now on, in theory. So for our example, that means the dog lunges, barks, growls on leash, gets shocked with an e-collar, feels pain, and shuts up, right? That's what's supposed to happen. Now what the dog learns is the other dog is dangerous and I better be as invisible as possible whenever this dog shows up. And again, this is as soon as the dog has learned that, taken into different places, different scenarios with different dogs. So this part is the same again. And sometimes some trainers even use praise after they have used corrections to stop the behavior. So they praise the dog for no longer reacting. Both methods have to be timed really well. They can both be messed up and they work for every issue, including aggression. Yes, positive reinforcement works for aggression. With both methods, the dog could connect something other than we want with the consequence, like a kid riding a bike nearby, or definitely you. You will be connected as well because you are in the scenario and close to your dog. Both can have setbacks. Positive reinforcement often has setbacks when the dog's not feeling well and when they cannot do whatever we taught them to do, so they fall back into old habits. Balanced most often has setbacks because the dogs cannot contain themselves any longer, so they explode. The difference is that with the correction approach, the behavior very often comes back more intense than it has been in the beginning. And that can also include, for a lunging, barking, growling dog, turning onto you when he cannot reach the other dog. That is what can happen. Now, it all comes back to the question I asked you in the beginning. How important is your dog's quality of life and that he trusts you, even in tricky situations? If this is something very important for you, tell me in the comments. Then I would use force-free. It just builds a more trusting relationship. And whenever it comes to tricky issues and aggression and fear and all the things that require a little bit more than just sit down, heel, whatever, a behavior consultation includes checking your dog's overall well-being, checking your relationship, the dog's history, health, hobbies, the needs, so everything around the dog. That's included in a good behavior consultation. So if you need something like that, check the description, book a free call, we see what I can do for you. Tell me in the comments if you want to see a video about a specific issue and how both methods would address that issue compared to each other. And of course, if you want to see how positive reinforcement is done in real life, watch this video.